Alright, this is the installation video for the Stage 2 kit for the Longshot and Zombie Strike Longshot. Now, to install this kit, you will need a small Phillips head screwdriver for your blaster screws, a small flathead screwdriver to help pry the shell open. And if you have not taken this off, or if you haven't installed it already, you will have to pry it off with 2 flathead screwdrivers. So if you've done this before, then you know that once you pry it off for the first time, it's easy to take apart. But on a brand new blaster, excuse me, let me remove the stock. On a brand new blaster with this installed, it's a one-way snap. And if your blaster is brand new and has not been opened since you've installed this, you will have to pry it off with 2 flathead screwdrivers like so, bracing them against the shell. And it takes quite a bit of force, so be careful not to damage your shell when you do it. And just, this is what when you have it braced on the shell, this is the motion, like that. And I like to brace here and here. You will also need a full-size number 2 screwdriver. And this is not optional. You have to have this to install the plunger head screw, because on a brand new plunger rod, there are no threads. You're going to have to cut, the screw will tap threads in, and it takes quite a bit of force. So you'll need a properly sized number 2 screwdriver. Okay, so first, remove all of the screws, and remove the screws in the stock, and remove the stock. I've already done that to save time on the video. You're going to then open up your blaster and set the top half aside. Now notice in this blaster is one of our tester blasters, so the locks have already been removed. There's no dart door. If you have a brand new blaster, there will be a small lock here, a bolt sled lock here, and of course you'll have your dart tooth and jam door. You don't want to lose these. Now the locks, to get to the first lock, you have to remove your trigger. And then there will be another screw here, which you'll have to remove, and then you can lift out the bolt sled along with that lock. So next, let's go ahead and remove the bolt sled. Be careful not to knock your chamber out, and then slide it back. There will be a bolt sled lock here, and you can just go ahead and get rid of that along with this lock. Excuse me, this is the trigger lock. You can get rid of that. The bolt sled lock goes back here. You can get rid of that. You won't be needing them. And then set this half of the shell aside. And then you can set your bolt sled and plunger aside. Next, you want to get your plunger head and install the O-ring. And do not grease this up yet. You can do that at the end. And now what I like to do is take the plunger head screw and go ahead and install it just to cut the threads. Because right now you can easily grab the plunger and screw it in. Later when the spring is on here and you're wrestling with this head under the tension from the 8-kilogram spring, this becomes a lot harder. So if you go ahead and cut the threads now, it'll make your life a lot easier when it comes to install the spring. And see, it's a little tough. If you think you're going to strip the head, you can go 1 full turn, back it out 1 turn, 1 full turn, and then keep going back and forth until it cuts all the way down. And of course, this won't go all the way in because the plunger head will be sitting there next to it. So you can go ahead and take this out. And now that we've gotten that out of the way, just set these parts aside. Now, to install this kit, you of course are going to be taking out the plunger, and you're going to have to pop this pin out. There are a couple ways to do this. You can use the small screwdriver you use to open the blaster to push the pin partially out and then grab it with pliers, or you can use a punch to punch it out. And that's what we're going to be doing. So this one has already been done a couple times, so it's a little looser. If you have a brand new blaster, you can brace it. You can brace your bolt sled on the plunger head and just tap the pin a couple times just to break it free. And then once you get the pin moving, it's pretty easy to pop out. Like that. And set that aside. Remove your breech. Take the stock bolt sled and set that aside. And now use your small Phillips head screwdriver to open up the plunger tube. This Longshot has already had the stage 1 kit installed. So you'll notice that the spring retainer is from the stage 1, and the spring is actually the 8 kilogram spring. And we're going to go ahead and use the 8 kilogram spring when we install the stage 2 parts. So now you'll need your number 2 screwdriver, and you can take that off. Okay. Keep your spring, keep your spring retainer, but you do not need the plunger rod or the stock plunger head. And just by way of reference, here's the difference between the 2 plunger heads. You can see the stock head has these cutouts and a gray O-ring. The Orange ModWorks O-ring is black and the head doesn't have cutouts. So we're going to set aside our stock parts, take the OMW plunger rod, and it's a little bit stiffer than the stock rod. And we're going to install the plunger or the spring retainer, and then the spring, and now the plunger head. So compress your spring, line up the notches on the plunger head and snap it into place, and then install the screw. Hold on, I'm going to change angles. Let's go at it from the side. So compress that spring and install the plunger head screw. I'll let the spring forward. There we go. This is not easy under that spring tension. All right, once it's in about 90% of the way, you don't have to brace the spring anymore. You can just grab it up in the front and finish screwing it in. Yep. Make sure your notches stay aligned and screw it down fully. There we go. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and lube up the O-ring. You don't need to use too much of the grease, just enough to give it a thin coat and then some. Because there's a little bit of extra space on this O-ring where it sits in the plunger, so it will hold the extra grease. And now install it into your plunger tube. You'll already notice that it's a bit tighter of a fit. There we go. And when we screw these in, the 2 small screws, press down on the spring retainer so it doesn't bend to one side. You do not want to strip these screw holes. Okay, now take the stage 2 bolt sled and install your breech. Take the pin, get it lined up, and you can either press it into place with the screwdriver, you can gently tap it into place while supporting the bolt sled. Just try not to bend the bolt sled in this area when you install the spring. So what I like to do is just brace it and then install it like so, with a pinching motion. There we go. And make sure it's flush. And there you have the stage 2 bolt sled and the stage 2 plunger rod installed. Next, take your shell and install the plunger mechanism. Line these wings up with this groove and double and triple check that this peg is in this hole. If not, when you fire, this peg will be sheared right off by that 8 kg spring. There we go. That was easier than usual. You want to make sure that your chamber stays in place. Sometimes when you're installing that bolt sled, this will come off and twist to one side. And now the plunger falls right into place, but don't trust it. You're going to want to tilt your blaster up, lift here, and look down through here to make sure that peg is in place. Because it looks the same when it is and when it isn't. All right, now miraculously our trigger catch did not come out during this whole process, so we're going to leave that alone. Now we're going to take the metal trigger that is included with the kit and the trigger spring. This spring is about the same as the stock spring, it's just a little wider here to accommodate the metal trigger. So we're going to drop that into place. Take our trigger screw and our large screwdriver and install that. And then our trigger spring will fit right onto this peg, just like so. And that is it for installing the stage 2 parts. Next, we want to get the top half of the shell on. And now if your bolt sled is in place, this will drop right on and you won't have to wiggle it around at all. If your shell does not come straight on, you're going to have to take it off and then double check the bolt sled. Just like that, right on. Now go ahead and install your screws, put your priming handle back, put the stock back on, and you go ahead and test fire. All right, once you have your shell together, go ahead and install your priming handle, and then put the screws back in and the stock back on, and go ahead and test fire. In the next video, we'll be shooting this over the Crony, so stay tuned and thanks for watching.